Going live for the second time today. Hit that like and subscribe. Please help me out. Let's get right into it. Julian Dorey.
Some of the main things that were said, and we're going to break down some of those things. There were some interesting lines that JD had. There were some interesting reactions. The body language was also kind of interesting. And like I said, in that middle hour, I thought there was a lot. We certainly have the JD Vance story to cover here. So JD talked with Rogan for 2 hours and I think 53 minutes, something like that. So it was a good full podcast. I have seen bits and pieces of the first hour, and then I looked at the timestamps in the third hour and didn't watch like a ton of that. The second hour is where they got to the real soup du jour issues of the moment that people are concerned about, and that was obviously what's going on in Iran and what is going on with the Epstein case. So here's the thing about this, and this is the world we seem to live in now. When I look at the reaction to something like this, before I did that, I went and watched on like 2.0 speed that middle hour yesterday before I saw anyone talking about it. And like I said at the outset, I think Joe did a really, really, really solid job. And I think it's very clear that it was free-flowing. I thought he challenged JD and, let some of the answers speak for themselves, which was quintessential Rogan. Then I went and looked at the reaction of the masses, and it's like he was stuck between a shit and a fart. He couldn't win. On one hand, you had people like, you were just cutting him off the whole time, just trying to take the other side, couldn't even let him say anything. Then you had other people saying he was glazing him the whole time. Unfortunately, this is how the internet works. It was on a whole nother level.
My fault. Sorry about that, guys.
With this podcast, and I don't say this whether this is a good or bad thing. It's just an observation. It makes me wonder if, we've gotten to a point where Joe has already lost the minute JD even walks into the studio. I'm getting some nods over here. Yeah, I mean, that's what it feels like. Now, my little corner of the internet aside, you know how I feel about bringing in politicians, and I don't do it. I've never done it. It has been a rule to this point. I don't say never on that because you don't know, but man, for me to change that rule, it would need to be a serious moment. I've brought on people like Joe Kent, who resigned from office and was working in this administration and is no longer in it. I think that's okay. But
what up, dog?
People that are actively running for office, I turned one down the other day again, or people that are in office in a political position, I just think there has to be a Chinese wall there. The reason that I have that rule, by the way, is because I had the luxury of watching things play out and having the example of people in front of me, starting with Joe Rogan. I have seen some of the no-win scenarios, in my opinion, that he's been put in the past, strictly by bringing on politicians, even if he might have objectively done a great job, and on many of them I think he did. It was like it became a no-win situation, and then once it also got all the way up to the point where obviously he has the biggest show in the world and then invites on both candidates running for president last year, Kamala turned it down, Trump, to his credit, accepted it, then it becomes like, oh, you're swinging the election.
Hey, thanks, bro. I love you, man.
Or something like that by having a guy on, which I don't think is fair at all. But this is one of those things where when I sit back and I look at the guys who have to trailblaze in front of me, that I have, again, the luxury of watching their example, it gives me way less of an excuse to make mistakes if I see things that turn out to be mistakes that they may be making right there. I'm not saying whether or not that's a mistake, but I'm saying the way I have seen it play out with having these politicians on over the years is that it's been a net negative for Joe to be able to not be accused of being in the tank for someone, or as I said with the JD thing, there were even people saying oh, he's just cutting him off, trying to take the other side just to do it or whatever. It's stupid. And so I don't.
Hey, Malik, is there an echo in the video, dude? Not me. I'm talking about the dude that's talking. Let me know.
I just want to be very, very, very careful with that. But obviously Joe's already done podcasts like this, so he's continuing to do them. I said at the outset that someone really close to him did call me and assure me after he listened to a podcast I did that none of the questions are pre-approved. And again, I kind of knew that. I had to look at the New York Times story and ask proper questions like that. That's why we do it. But I think anyone accusing him of having pre-approved questions with JD Vance is not looking at it objectively. It's very clear that that is not the case. And we're going to look at some of these clips here. We're going to do it like Joe and some of the big shit, like all.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
The big shows on YouTube, YouTube will automatically tag some stuff. So we may be having just audio, or it may be smaller on the screen, but you're going to hear some of the main things that were said, and we're going to break down some of those things. There were some interesting lines that JD had. There were some interesting reactions. The body language was also kind of interesting. And like I said, in that middle hour, I thought there was a lot that Joe was able to get to and get him to say, including some things that I think kind of contradicted, talking about JD, I think kind of contradicted himself. And what I will say is that JD Vance is in a tough position because as the vice president, a part of his literal job description, which, like everything, this does have a limit on it, but it's a very, very high limit. Part of his literal job description is that he's going to support the president, even when behind closed doors he disagrees with them. And I understand that. Doesn't change the fact that if very, very bad decisions are made that affect the American people, even if that's a part of his job description, people are righteously going to look at him and say, what the fuck? And I do think there's a part of him, to me, that understands that. But, you know, there was a lot of speaking out of both sides of his mouth here. And where we've criticized him, we were actually Steve and I were just on my buddy John Rondi's podcast. Great show that's very close to us, and we're good friends with John. But we go on there maybe every 6 months or so. But we were talking about that on that episode where it's like, yeah, it's nice to see a guy like JD Vance in the past 3-4 weeks come out and actually say some things that we've all been thinking for a long time now. And that's certainly better than nothing. But two things. A, you need to see long-term actions that prove that he means some of those things he's saying and, you know, changing course on stuff. That's number one.
I know, pimp. I'm working on it.
One. And number two, yeah, it doesn't change the fact that this administration, the last administration at the very least, will just stop there.
No, that's not mean at all, bro.
But I could go way farther than that with other things related to the Middle East. These past two administrations, you know, they could have said something a lot sooner. And there's been a lot of human suffering and damage that has happened.
See, bro, I already got a warning on YouTube, so I think I'm being shadow banned because my lives don't get pushed out nowhere. Like, it'll be rare. Like, it'll be like midnight or 11 o'clock at night when people will come into my lives. Not during the day like this. So I'm trying to fuck with that YouTube algorithm, trying to get it to where it's at. Sorry for anybody who's watching this in the future. Hit that subscribe for me.
Because they didn't do that. And we've talked about it on this show about how I feel like the most poll-conscious president of all time, Donald Trump, has been incredibly unaware. Let me take that back. Has been incredibly ignoring of two very big polls where even his base is very against him, to say nothing of the overall American people, which is our entering the Iran war, particularly through our relationship with the Israeli government, which people in America, by the percentages, do not like. Obviously, the very old people are still kind of on that, but looking at some of the boomers there, not our boomers, though. Not the ones listening to this. We love them, right, Thief?
Yeah, we love them.
Yeah, the boomers listening to this get it. But, you know, your friends who maybe only watch CNN or Fox or, you know, enter whatever news station here, obviously, like, a lot of them still kind of don't get it. But people below age 55, by and large, like, they're starting to kind of question some of that stuff. And so Donald Trump has, until at least very recently, has completely ignored that. And you have to ask the question why that is. And you will see where in some of these clips we go through, Rogan does get at that. And I don't know. I'll let you guys decide. But from my perspective, there were some points there where you could see, and I don't blame him, J.D. Vance very uncomfortable with, like, oh, fuck, here we go. Like, all right, yeah, no, it's a valid question.
Yeah, if you ask me, I think Joe Rogan went fucking easy on him. It's bullshit.
But how am I going to answer this and make this look clean? But I think there were also some points where he had to break with him a little bit, and meaning break with the president in some ways, or whether he knew that or not. Again, when you're talking for 3 hours, I think anyone who sat in this seat will tell you, I've sat in this seat on other podcasts as well, like, it becomes free-flowing. Even if you're trying to not have it be that way, like, it's going to be that way, and at some point when you're the vice president of the United States and there's a lot of very intricate details about some serious situations, you're probably...
That's solid advice, bro. Thanks, man.
Probably going to end up saying things that show your hand a little bit that may not be the exact hand that say the president has. But when Joe Kent got in here, he had listened to it on his drive up here, that podcast, and we talked about it a bit on the podcast as well. But my vibe from Joe was JD, who obviously I believe he's friends with him. I don't know if he said that legit, but he, in the way he's described him, it's appeared like they're friends. You know, there were things that JD said where he's like, I wish he would have said this instead of this, or I don't know, but I'll kind of let that part of the podcast do the talking, and you guys can make your own judgment there. But Deef, let's start off with the clip at the 106:35 timestamp, where where Vance is laying out the goal as no nuke. And yeah, that should be perfect right there. So if you only see me or Deef on the cam right now, that's because we cannot play the actual video by copyright, but you're going to have the audio here at the very least, and maybe we'll end up having the video as well. But go ahead, Deef. 1.5, right?
Yeah. The way that you just described it aligns with our campaign in Iran?
Well,
yeah, I have Discord. I just don't know how to use any of this shit, man. I'm fucking new to technology, kind of.
I think that the goal is certainly good, which is to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
I'm leering!
And I think that there are obviously a lot of questions about how best to achieve that. There's both a short term and a long.
So he's saying right there the clear goal is to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. We have heard at different points throughout the process of this Iran war that goes in fucking time as a flat circle over the course of it, we have heard them move that goalpost and say the goal is regime change. So now you have the vice president laying it out, I think, saying, and this is the guy who just negotiated the MOU that also turned into a mess, saying, I think clearly the goal is just no nuke. Let's keep going.
Long-term piece of it. I think the short-term piece of it is effectively what's already been done, which is you destroy the nuclear sites and you destroy and eliminate the ability to rebuild the nuclear sites. I think there's a longer-term thing, which is where like a lot of debate is focused on right now, which is that building a nuclear program is hard, but it's not impossible. And it's expensive, but it's actually not even that expensive if you look at, I mean, you could go on YouTube right now and find out how to build an atomic bomb. So part of our Iran policy, and this is where I get frustrated with people who say you should never...
Isn't that fucking wild? We're living in a world where someone's like, oh, how do I build a nuke? And they could fucking do it. Or, you know, it's crazy. Go ahead.
Negotiate with Iran. Part of our Iran policy is like solving the long-term problem. That if we could create the sort of circumstance where Iran would commit not just to not have a nuclear weapon right now, but over the long term to not try to rebuild that capacity, like, yeah, I think that is a good and valuable thing.
If it was your call, would you have done exactly the same thing?
Great question.
Well, what did the president said publicly that JD was less enthusiastic about it? I think was the exact phrase that he used. I mean, my attitude towards this man, as you know, is the vice president. I'm not a public commentator. Like, my job is to give the best advice I can to the president of the United States.
Okay, pause that real quick. It can't be both, though. And I'm not trying to read into his words too much here, but
I appreciate it, bro. We'll hook up sometime, man. We'll figure it out.
But he said this at least a couple times across this sequence where he was saying, listen, I'm not a public commentator. My brother in Christ, you are sitting here for 3 hours on the biggest podcast in the world commentating publicly about what's going on behind closed doors. So, like, and, you know, he went on Diary of a CEO, he went on fucking Megyn Kelly, he went on all these shows. Maybe his argument could be, well, that's always been the case. People in politics, I mean, there's shows like Meet the Press. There's fucking news every night where you see a senator on there or fucking sometimes a vice president or whatever. So in that capacity, I'm just talking about things, you know, that are normal just to get the word out or whatever rather than commentating on it. But it's very clear in a 3-hour free-flowing sit-down, his own commentary is entering the chat. So we'll keep it going. But that was interesting.
A little bit about what that advice was. But once the president makes a decision, so long as I think that it's legal and ethical and all that stuff, and I certainly think whether you agree or disagree with it, what we've done has been legal. My attitude towards it is I try to make it as successful as possible.
Yeah, I said we can hook up sometime, man. We'll get it figured out. I appreciate all the help, though.
And I've got friends, of course, I think, you've expressed some skepticism of this. I've got a lot of friends, both in private and public, who've expressed skepticism of this, who say, well, this is terrible, we disagree with the decision, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not a public commentator. My approach to this is not a Monday morning quarterback decision that was made 3 months ago. My approach to it is to try to make it as successful as possible, which is why I poured my heart and soul into these negotiations, which is why I've tried to make that goal, Iran not having a nuclear weapon, something that's not true, both not just now, but is true in the long term. And that's the way that I try to approach it.
Okay,
so
let's pause that right there. All right, so again, kind of goes back to that same point, but like, what are you doing right here? Now, I want to go to the 124.15 one beef, because this is where there's going to be a lot of content, and we're going to stop it and roll through, because he's talking about the influence of this war between the war hawks who are calling for it, or the Israeli government, who felt this war was in their best interests and was lobbying Trump to do it. And he's talking about some of that influence coming into America and where it's a problem. And thank you guys for watching the episode.
Thank you guys for joining me here today. Hit that subscribe if you're new, if you made it all the way to the end of this fucking video. But Malik, yeah, we can definitely hook up, man. Tell your dad to call me, bro. But I'm out of here for now, guys. I will see y'all next time. Fucking never figure out how to fucking end these streams. Ha.